Towards the end, there had been boys too after they went comprehensive, but it was the girls she especially remembered. Men had enough already. Women were socialised not to put themselves first. She certainly had been. It was women who needed more of a hand making choices. She had made choices. Thinking about that, she felt the strange doubling, the contradictory memories, as if she had two histories that both led her to this point, this nursing home. She was confused, there was no question about that. She had lived a long life. They asked her how old she was, and she said she was nearly 90, because she couldn't remember whether she was 88 or 89, and she couldn't remember if it was 2014 or 2015 either. She kept finding out, and it kept slipping away. She was born in 1926, the year of the general strike. She held on to that. That wasn't doubled. Her memories of childhood were solitary and fixed, clear and single as slides thrown on a screen. It must have happened later, whatever it was that caused it. At Oxford? After? There were no slides anymore. Her grandchildren showed her photographs on their phones. They lived in a different world from the world where she had grown up. A different world. She considered that for a moment. She had never cared for science fiction, though she had friends who did. She'd read a children's book to the class once, Penelope Farmer's Charlotte Sometimes, about a girl in boarding school who woke up each day in a different time, 40 years behind, changing places with another girl. She remembered they did each other's homework, which worked well enough except when it came to memorising poetry. She had been forced to memorise just such reams of poetry by her mother, which had come in handy later. She was never at a loss for a quotation. She'd probably been accepted into Oxford on her ability to quote, though of course it was the war, and the lack of young men had made it easier for women. She had been to Oxford. Her memories there were not confusingly doubled. Tolkien had taught her Old English. She remembered him declaiming Beowulf at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, coming into the room and putting the book down with a bang and turning to them all, "What?" He hadn't been famous then either. It was years before The Lord of the Rings and all the fuss. Later, people had been so excited when she told them she'd known him. You can never tell who's going to be famous. And at Oxford, as Margaret Drabble had written, everyone had the excitement of thinking they might be going to be someone famous. She'd never imagined that she would be. But she had wondered about her friends, and certainly Mark. Poor Mark. The indisputable fact was, she was confused. She lost track of her thoughts. She had difficulty remembering things. People told her things, and she heard them and reacted, and then forgot all about them. She had forgotten that Bethany had been signed by a record label. That she was just as delighted the second time Bethany told her didn't matter. Bethany had been crushed that she had forgotten. Worse, she'd forgotten, unforgivably, that Jamie had been killed. She knew that Cathy was wounded that she could have forgotten, even though she'd said she wished she could forget herself. Cathy was so easily hurt, and she wouldn't have hurt her for anything, especially after such a loss, but she had, unthinkingly, because her brain wouldn't hold the memory. How much else had she forgotten, and then not even remembered that she'd forgotten? Her brain couldn't be trusted. Now she imagined that she was living in two different realities, drifting between them, but it must be her brain that was at fault, like a computer with a virus that made some sectors inaccessible and others impossible to write to. That had been Rodri's metaphor. Rodri was one of the few people who would talk to her about her dementia as a problem with potential fixes and workarounds. She hadn't seen him for too long. Perhaps he was busy. Or perhaps she'd been in the other world, the world where he didn't exist. She picked up a book. She'd given up on trying to read new books, though it broke her heart. She couldn't find where she'd put them down, and she couldn't remember what she'd read so far. She could still reread old books, like Old Friends, though she knew that too would go. Before the end, her mother had forgotten how to read. For now, while she could, she'd read a lot of poetry, a lot of classics. Elizabeth Gaskell's Cranford came to her hand now, and she opened it at random to read about Miss Matty and her financial difficulties back in the time of King William. The last gigot in England had been seen in Cranford, and seen without a smile. After a while, she let the book drop. It had grown dark outside. She got up and tottered over to draw the curtains. She made her way carefully, hanging onto the bed and then the wall. They didn't like her to do it without the quad cane, but she was safe enough. There wasn't room to fall. Though she had fallen once on her way to the toilet and forgotten that she had a button to call for help. The curtains were navy blue, although she was quite sure there had been a pale green blind the last time. She leaned on the windowsill, looking out at the bare branches of a sycamore moving in the breeze. The moon was half obscured by a thin veil of cloud. Where was this place? Up on the moor? Or was it somewhere along the canal? There might be birds in the branches in the morning. She must remember to come and look. She had her binoculars somewhere. She remembered insisting on holding on to them, and Philip saying gently that she wouldn't have any use for them in the nursing home, and Ginny saying in her gruff way she might as well bring them if she wanted them. They must be here somewhere, unless that was in the other world. It would be very unfair if the binoculars were in one world and the tree were in the other. If there were two worlds. If there were two worlds, then what caused her to slide between them? There weren't two times as there were for Charlotte. It was the same year, whichever year it was. It was just that things were different, things that shouldn't have been different. She had 4 children, or 3. There was a lift in the nursing home, or there was only a stair lift. She could remember things that couldn't simultaneously be true. She remembered Kennedy being assassinated, and she remembered him declining to run again after the Cuban Missile Exchange. They couldn't both have happened, yet she remembered them both happening. Had she made a choice that could have gone 2 ways and thereafter had 2 lives? 2 lives that both began in Twickenham in 1926 and both ended here in this nursing home in 2014 or 2015, whichever it was. She shuffled back and looked at her notes clipped to the end of the bed. It was February the 5th, 2015, and she was VC. That was definite and good to know. She sat down but did not take up the book. It would be supper time soon. She could hear the trolley moving down the corridor. They'd feed her, and then it would be time for bed. This was the same, whatever world she was in. If she had made a choice, well, she knew she had. She could remember it as clearly as she could remember anything. She'd been in that little phone box in the corridor in the Pines, and Mark had said that if she was going to marry him, it would have to be now or never. And she'd been startled and confused, and had stood there in the smell of chalk and disinfectant and girls, and hesitated, and made the decision that changed everything in her life. Questions? Yeah?
What are you working on now?
I am revising a book that I finished at the end of last year. I have 2 books coming out next year, which are called The Just City and The Philosopher Kings, and which are about Greek gods and time travellers setting up Plato's Republic. With the help of giant robots on Atlantis, Thera before it erupted, and this goes about as well as you would expect. 300 philosophers and classics majors from across all of time, with 10,000 slave children, trying to implement Plato's Republic. And I am revising the second volume of that. That's what I'm doing right now. The first volume will be out in January. The Just City. Yeah, all my books are different, I was just saying. I get bored, I write something and then I do not want to write the same thing again. So I write different things, so all my books are different. So it's perfectly reasonable for you to like one of my books and not like other ones, and I won't be offended if this is the case for anybody, but buy them anyway.
Does activism in some way, is it one of the reasons why her world is different?
Right. Everything that she does changes everything in both lives, yeah, but not everything. A lot of what she does is nothing, and it doesn't make any difference, but certain things do make a difference. And yes, that is one of the things that makes a difference, because she's doing that and encouraging other people and doing that, yeah. She does little things. She's not a giant mover. This is somebody who is in the background of history in the way that we all are. She's not somebody who changes worlds by big decisions. She's somebody who changes worlds by the kind of small things that we can all do. Drafting a petition, having a petition out there that wasn't there in the other world where she didn't draft the petition, can make a difference, does make a difference, and those level of things. But also, the very first thing that she does after she makes the now or never marriage proposal is she goes and marks the exam papers. And in one world she marks them extra harshly, and in the other world she marks them extra leniently. That does not have an instant effect on the world, but it has a long-term effect on the world.
Did not catch that.
Just things like that. That might not have been in the version that you read if you read an early version.
I read an early version.
Because that, yeah, but things like that make a difference. Yeah. This is my favourite song, okay? This is not my favourite song of Ada's, this is my favourite song. I like this even better than I like the third Brandenburg Concerto.
But no pressure.
Yeah,
No, this is yeah, but I'm famed for my musical taste. As you know. Yeah, so you will like it.
Our new world is so close. Mars has treasures we're only just starting to find. Frozen mountains and crimson dust waiting for footprints that will not be mine. 100 years to run the first test, another to raise the first dome. The moon, then Mars, then Titan next, a lifetime to touch each new home. And I want it so much. Close my eyes, I can taste the Mars dust in the air. In the darkness the space stations shimmer in orbits that I will not share. But I'll teach the student who'll manage the factory that tempers the steel that makes colonies strong. And I'll write the program that runs the computer that charts out the stars where our rockets belong. It will never get easy to wake from my dream when the future I dream of is so far away. But I am willing to sacrifice something I don't have for something I won't have, but somebody will someday. And it feels like a waste, all this working and waiting and battling time. And all for a kingdom that none of my efforts will ever make mine. But brick by brick, the pyramids rose with most hidden under the sand. So life by life, the project grows in ways I might not understand. I am voyaging too. We will need the foundation as much as the dome for those worlds to come true. And I'll clerk the office that handles the funding, that raises the tower, that watches the sky. And I'll staff the bookstore that carries the journal, that sparks the ideal that makes solar sails fly. It takes so many sailors to conquer an ocean, and so many more when it's light years away. But I am willing to sacrifice something I don't have for something I won't have, but somebody will someday. It's so easy to run, hide away in my books, games, and fantasy plans. Let them call me a coward who can't face reality's grown-up demands. But if I love my fantasy worlds, it's not fantasy love that I feel. And so much more I feel for this, the world that created them, world we create with them, one chance to make them all real. And I know we won't stop. We've planned too many wonders for one little star. Though so often the present may seem too complacent to take us that far. But I'll tell the story and I'll draw the picture and I'll sing the anthem that banishes doubt and host the convention that summons the family that carries the fire that never burns out. There are so many chances to give up the journey, especially when it's so easy to stay. but I am willing to sacrifice something I don't have for something I won't have. And not only me, but we are willing to sacrifice something we don't have for something we won't have. So somebody will, so somebody will someday.